Intel 13th gen, Ryzen 7000 series, got fast DDR5 RAM. And as a South African, of course, pricing is a very important thing to me. Pricing isn't that bad right now. With all of these powerful components now available, there really has never been a better time for a South African to get a desktop computer. They just handle things so much better under load.
Shedding Stage 8.
Since a lot of our viewers are international, this may mean that you are not from South Africa. And if you're not from South Africa, you may not be aware of the current situation with what we call load shedding. So basically all over the country, we have these rolling blackouts. Every day for a couple of hours at a time, a few times a day, our power goes out. I've got load shedding between 10 and 12 hours a day at the moment. As you can imagine, this has had a huge impact on our economy, but it gets even worse when you combine it with the pandemic that's been happening over the past few years. So the effect of the pandemic was that a lot of people needed to work from home, and this also means that they needed high-performance computers to be able to do their work from home. Desktop computers plug into the wall. So basically, if you bought a very expensive high-performance desktop over the past couple of years, what is likely the case now is that you can't use it for half the day. Tons of people have had to invest in things like generators, inverters. These costs are enormous for South Africans. With businesses losing money the way that they have been over the past few years, they can't afford to provide their employees with their own generators. What this means is that a lot of people have been opting for laptops rather than desktops. It makes sense if the lights go out for 2 hours at a time, you can still use your high-performance computer. It also gives them added mobility because it means they can either work from home on their laptop or they can take it into the office, or you can take it to a cafe where they have Wi-Fi and where you can plug in the charger and stuff. Our job is to provide people with high-performance computers for power-hungry software. We do sell laptops. In fact, we sell quite a few laptops. But there are drawbacks to laptops that people don't realize. We understand the impact that both the pandemic and load shedding have had on South African professionals, but we would still like South Africans to be able to use the most powerful systems that they can at the most reasonable price point. If you look at a graph of price to performance of desktops versus laptops, there is definitely a region where laptops are competitive. They can actually keep up with desktops that cost the same amount. However, after this point, and it's not an especially high price point, it is undeniable that desktops just completely outclass laptops at the same price point. It all makes sense from a physics standpoint. Desktops are huge and laptops are very thin. This means that these high power components need to be shrunk down in order to fit. This includes very important components like the CPU, the GPU, and the cooling. Even though the laptops have i7 13th gen or they have RTX 4080, it is still quite far off from the performance that you would get from the desktop variants of those components. And then looking at cooling and airflow, in desktop computers you can fit in a massive CPU cooler with a lot of heat pipes and a lot of big fins which can dissipate the heat very effectively. They also have big fans that are 120 to 140 millimeters, which is huge. When you're looking at laptop cooling, on the other hand, there's just a couple of flat pipes that go from the CPU and GPU to a couple of tiny fans. With this in mind, not only are the CPU and GPU already hindered by the fact that they're a lot smaller than their desktop counterparts, it also means that the heat can't be managed as effectively. So it's a lot easier for them to overheat and therefore thermal throttle. Thermal throttling is when, for example, the CPU or GPU reach too high a temperature, and so they need to limit themselves in order to prevent permanent damage. The other thing about CPUs and GPUs in laptops, they are soldered to the motherboard. This means that they can never be upgraded in the future. In fact, the only components you generally can upgrade in a laptop would be the RAM and the SSD, and even those aren't always guaranteed. So if you find that in the future your laptop isn't able to handle your software and your larger projects anymore, you won't be able to upgrade the CPU or the GPU. You can add in more RAM and you can add in more storage, but the thing is, neither of those is necessarily the solution to all problems. And then perhaps the biggest thing that people don't realize when it comes to laptops, if they're not plugged into the wall, then they're not going to be able to make full use of their CPU and GPU. Laptops have these power settings to reduce the performance of those components so that when it's not plugged in, it's not going to just die in a couple of minutes. This means that you can use your laptop during load shedding, but you're not going to be able to use it for any of the major projects that you're working on. You can use it for things like your browser, for Excel, and very low power tasks, but you're not going to be able to do any rendering or modeling. There's also the concern with repairs. If a single part in a laptop goes, sometimes the entire laptop just needs to be scrapped. It can be repaired a lot of the time, but the cost of that is sometimes close to just buying a new laptop. But how do we resolve this? Laptops have drawbacks, but desktops also have drawbacks at the moment. So what actually is the solution? Naturally, the first option would be backup power, if you can afford it. One thing that's been working really well for us though is having high-performance desktop PCs at the office and then accessing them remotely from home. To do this, we use an app called Parsec, which was developed for gamers. And since it was developed for gamers, that means that there's pretty low latency. It also helps that it doesn't require an especially high power computer. So you could use whatever laptop you have, even if it's a slightly older one, and you can connect to your high power computer that's at work. This has benefits apart from the obvious application of being able to work through load shedding. I've got a decent computer at home, but my computer at the office has a much more powerful graphics card. Since I'm working on DaVinci Resolve, this means that I can take advantage of that graphics card power. So even when I'm working from home, I connect remotely to the computer at work, and I've edited quite a few videos this way. Even if you look at the most recent video that we did, which was about AutoCAD 2024, it's not the most effects-heavy video, but I did need to work with some really fine details, scaling and moving around certain text and images that I was overlaying on the screen. That was actually edited completely on my computer at home, which was remotely connected to the one at work. Some of the Modern Technologies team has also used this method to work on Autodesk software like Revit, Inventor, AutoCAD, and they've also found this to be quite a smooth experience. The only thing is the colors may not be entirely accurate, so if you're working on things like photography or other types of graphic design work, it may not be the best option for you, but there's still a lot that you can do with Parsec. This is absolutely our recommended solution for most South African professionals who need to work from home but can't afford backup power. The cost for the employer wouldn't be super high either, because you would be able to get higher performance systems at a lower price. You would just need to get generators for the office so that all of those computers can run. And you may need to buy a couple of more affordable laptops so that the people who may not have their own laptops can use those at home. I'd love to hear about your solutions and workarounds for load shedding, and if you've tried this remote method or if it's something that you would consider. Personally, it's been working really, really well for me, and I'm very happy with the results. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again soon.